The Lagos orphanage reeked of disinfectant and broken dreams. 16-year-old Amara pressed her face against the grimy window, watching luxury cars glide past like mirages in the dusty heat. Her calloused fingers traced the glass as Sister Margaret's voice echoed through the corridor. "Amara, come quickly, child." Her heart hammered against her ribs. After 6 years in this place, she knew that tone. Someone was here for her. But adoption? At her age? Impossible. In the office sat a woman who looked like she'd stepped from a Nollywood movie. Designer clothes, gold jewelry catching the fluorescent light, and an air of authority that made the room feel smaller. Mrs. Grace Okafor, wife of oil magnate Chief Okafor, studied Amara with calculating eyes. "She's perfect," Mrs. Okafor declared, her Lagos accent crisp with education and wealth. "Strong, healthy, old enough to work properly." Sister Margaret shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Okafor, I must remind you, this is domestic assistance, not—" "Of course, sister. The girl will be well cared for." Amara's stomach twisted. She wasn't being adopted. She was being purchased. As Mrs. Okafor counted out crisp Naira notes, Amara caught a glimpse of something in her purse. A family photograph. A beautiful mansion, a distinguished man, and a girl who looked strikingly similar to Amara herself. The resemblance was so uncanny it made her breath catch. But before she could process this strange coincidence, Mrs. Okafor snapped her purse shut and stood. "Pack your things, girl. Your new life begins now." As Amara gathered her meager possessions, a faded dress, worn shoes, and her mother's silver bracelet, she couldn't shake the image of that photograph. Who was that girl, and why did seeing her feel like looking into a mirror? The Okafor Mansion in Victoria Island stood like a fortress of marble and glass, its gates guarded by stern-faced security men. As their black Mercedes pulled through the compound, Amara pressed her nose to the tinted window, overwhelmed by the opulence. Manicured lawns, a swimming pool that sparkled like diamonds, and servant quarters that looked better than the orphanage. Mrs. Okafor barely glanced at her during the ride, busy with phone calls in rapid Yoruba, but Amara caught fragments. Something about keeping her away from Kemi, and the resemblance is disturbing. Who was Kemi? The head housekeeper, Mama Siwa, met them at the servants' entrance, a weathered woman with kind eyes that held secrets. She led Amara through a maze of corridors, past rooms filled with antiques and artwork worth more than most people's homes. "You'll work hard here," Mama Siwa whispered as they walked. "But be careful, child. This house has many shadows." Amara's room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a window overlooking the main house. As she unpacked, she heard laughter drifting from the garden, light, carefree, and utterly different from the orphanage's hollow echoes. Peering through her window, she saw her, a girl about her age, lounging by the pool, surrounded by friends. Designer clothes, perfect hair, and that same face that had haunted Amara since the photograph. This had to be Kemi, the Okafor's daughter. But as Amara stared, something cold settled in her stomach. The resemblance wasn't just striking, it was impossible. They could have been twins. That night, as rain drummed against her window, Amara clutched her mother's bracelet and wondered what twisted fate had brought her to this place. The silver felt warm against her palm, and for a moment she could almost hear her mother's voice, "Your true family will find you, my precious one." But her mother was dead, and Amara was alone in a house of strangers who shared her face.
Amara's days began before dawn, scrubbing floors, washing clothes, serving meals to people who looked through her as if she were invisible. The work was backbreaking, but it was the isolation that truly wounded her. She was forbidden from the main house when the family was present, confined to shadows and service corridors. But curiosity proved stronger than fear. On her third week, while dusting the library, she heard voices approaching. Panic seized her. Mrs. O'Coffer's strict rules echoed in her mind. She dove behind a massive bookshelf just as footsteps entered. "Mommy, I want to go to London for university," came a familiar voice. "Cammy." "Absolutely not." Mrs. O'Coffer's tone was ice. "You'll study here, where I can watch you." "But all my friends are going abroad. You're treating me like a prisoner." "I'm protecting you, Cammy. You don't understand." "Understand what? That you're paranoid? That you see enemies everywhere?" A long silence. Then Mrs. O'Coffer's voice, softer but more chilling. "Some enemies are closer than you think, my dear. Much closer." Footsteps approached Amara's hiding spot. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure they'd hear it. Through a gap in the books, she saw Mrs. O'Coffer pause, her eyes scanning the shelves with predatory intensity. "What is it, Mummy?" "Nothing," Mrs. O'Coffer murmured, but her gaze lingered. "Just shadows." After they left, Amara remained frozen behind the books, Mrs. O'Coffer's words echoing. "Some enemies are closer than you think." That evening, while hanging laundry in the garden, she spotted Kemi alone by the pool, crying softly. Every instinct told Amara to leave, but something deeper, a pull she couldn't explain, drew her forward. "Are you all right?" Amara whispered from the shadows. Kemi spun around, her eyes widening. For a long moment they stared at each other, two faces that were mirrors, two lives that couldn't have been more different. "You're the new girl, the one Mommy won't let me see." "I'm Amara." "Kemi." A pause. "You look familiar." Before either could say more, the garden lights blazed on. Mrs. O'Coffer stood on the terrace, her face a mask of fury, and something else, fear. "Amara, get away from her now!"
Amara's punishment was swift and brutal. 3 days locked in her room with only bread and water. But it was the conversation she overheard through her thin walls that truly shook her. Chief O'Coffer had returned from his business trip, his deep voice rumbling through the house like thunder. Amara pressed her ear to the wall, catching fragments of a heated argument in the master bedroom. "Dangerous game you're playing, Grace." Had to do something about the resemblance. "DNA test would destroy everything. That cursed bracelet she wears." Amara's hand flew to her mother's silver bracelet, hidden beneath her clothes. How did they know about it? On the 4th day, Mama Sewa brought her food and a warning. "The madam is planning something. Be very careful, child." But Amara was beyond caution. The mystery was consuming her, and she needed answers. That night, she crept through the house like a ghost, following a route she'd memorized from her cleaning duties. Chief O'Coffer's study was locked, but the key hung on a hook behind a painting, a hiding spot she'd discovered while dusting. Inside, filing cabinets lined the walls, filled with business documents and personal papers. In the bottom drawer was desk, she found it. A folder marked Family Confidential. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were photographs spanning decades. Chief O'Coffer as a young man, Mrs. O'Coffer in her youth, and another woman, beautiful, with kind eyes and a silver bracelet identical to Amara's. The woman held a baby in her arms, and at the bottom of the photo, in Chief O'Coffer's handwriting, "My beloved Folake and our daughter, 1989. Amara's birth year. More photos followed, the woman and child in a modest home, then in what looked like a hospital. The final photo showed only the woman, thin and pale, still wearing the silver bracelet. Beneath the photographs was a document that made Amara's world tilt. A birth certificate. Name, Amara Folake Okafor. Father, Chief Samuel Okafor. Mother, Folake Adeyemi. She was not an orphan bought as a servant. She was Chief Okafor's daughter. As this revelation crashed over her, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Amara quickly photographed the documents with an old phone Mama Sewa had given her, then scrambled to return everything to its place. She barely made it back to her room before she heard Chief Okafor's voice. "Someone's been in my study."
Amara didn't sleep. She stared at the photos on the phone, her mind reeling. If she was Chief Okafor's daughter, then Kemi was her half-sister. But why was she living as a servant while Kemi lived in luxury? The answer came the next morning when she overheard Mrs. Okafor speaking to someone on the phone in hushed, urgent tones. The first wife's child survived after all. Yes, I thought she died with her mother. Someone must have hidden her. If Samuel discovers she's alive. First wife? Amar's mother had been Chief Okafor's first wife. Eliminate the threat before she realizes who she is, the inheritance laws. Everything would go to her as the eldest. Mrs. Okafor was planning to kill her. Amara's hands shook as the pieces fell into place. Her mother hadn't died naturally, she'd been murdered. Amara had been hidden away, told she was an orphan, while Mrs. Okafor raised her own daughter as the sole heiress. But someone had made a mistake bringing her here. The resemblance to Kemi was too strong, too dangerous. Now Mrs. Okafor had to eliminate the evidence. That afternoon, while serving lunch, Amara caught Chief Okafor staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. When their eyes met, something flickered in his face. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. "What's your name, child?" he asked suddenly. Mrs. Okafor's fork clattered against her plate. "Samuel, she's just a servant." "I asked her name." "Amara, sir." He went very still. "Amara. That was..." He stopped, his eyes traveling to her face, then to the silver bracelet just visible at her wrist. "Where did you get that bracelet?" "My mother gave it to me, sir, before she died." The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Mrs. Okafor's face had gone pale, her eyes darting between her husband and Amara like a trapped animal. "What was your mother's name?" Chief Okafor's voice was barely a whisper. "Folake, sir. Folake Adeani." The plate shattered as it hit the floor. Chief Okafor was on his feet, his face a mask of shock and growing rage. "Folake's daughter! You're Folake's daughter!" Mrs. Okafor stood abruptly. "Samuel, please, I can explain." "Explain what? How my first wife's child, who I was told died with her mother, is working as a servant in my house. How you knew who she was and said nothing." The truth was finally coming out, but Amara could see the murder in Mrs. Okafor's eyes. She was running out of time.
The mansion erupted into chaos. Chief Okafor's roar of rage echoed through every room as he confronted his wife, while Amara stood frozen in the dining room, finally understanding why she'd felt so drawn to this house, this family. 17 years! Chief Okafor's voice shook the walls. For 17 years you let me believe my daughter was dead? She was supposed to be dead, Mrs. Okafor shrieked back. I did what I had to do to protect Kemi's future. Amara's blood turned to ice. Mrs. Okafor had just confessed to attempted murder. Kemi appeared in the doorway, her face pale with shock. Mummy, what are you saying? What daughter? Chief Okafor turned to Amara, his eyes filled with tears and 17 years of grief. "This is Amara, your older sister, my daughter with Folklore." "Sister?" Kemi's eyes darted between Amara and her parents. But that's impossible." "Very possible," Chief Okafor said grimly, "and very real. Grace, how did you know who she was?" Mrs. Okafor's composure finally cracked. "The resemblance to Kemi was too strong. I had to investigate. When I found her at the orphanage, I thought if I kept her here as a servant, I could control the situation." "Control it how?" The dangerous quiet in Chief Okafor's voice made everyone freeze. Amara found her voice. "She was planning to kill me." She pulled out the phone, showing the photos she'd taken. "I overheard her on the phone. She said I was a threat to Kemi's inheritance." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Chief Okafor moved with terrifying calm, walking to his study and returning with the folder Amara had found. "Is this what you were looking for?" He spread the photographs and documents on the table. "The truth about your mother, Amara. Folklore was my first wife. We married young, loved deeply. She died when you were 3 months old, or so I was told." He fixed his wife with a stare that could have melted steel. "But she didn't die naturally, did you, Grace?" Mrs. Okafor backed toward the door. "Samuel, please! You poisoned her, slowly, so it looked like illness. Then you took the baby, my baby, and told me she died too." Amara felt the room spinning. Her mother had been murdered, and she'd been stolen, hidden away while Mrs. Okafor stepped into her mother's place. "Where has she been all these years?" Chief Okafor demanded. "The orphanage. I paid them to keep her, to never let her be adopted." 17 years of lies, 17 years of stolen childhood, 17 years of living as an orphan while her real family grieved for her. But Mrs. Okafor wasn't finished. As Chief Okafor reached for his phone, presumably to call the police, she pulled something from her purse, a small, silver gun. "I won't let you destroy everything I've built," she said, her voice deadly calm. "Kemi is my daughter. This empire will be hers." The gun was pointed directly at Amara's heart.
"Mummy, no!" Kemi threw herself between the gun and Amara, her face streaked with tears. "She's my sister. You can't hurt her." For a moment, Mrs. Okafor hesitated, the gun wavering. In that instant, Chief Okafor lunged forward, but Mrs. Okafor was quicker, backing toward the terrace with the weapons still trained on them. "Kemi, move away from her," Mrs. Okafor commanded. "She's not your real sister. She's a threat to everything we've built." "She is my sister," Kemi's voice cracked with emotion. "Look at her, Mummy. Look at us. We're practically twins. How could you do this to our family?" Amara watched in amazement as the girl who'd lived a life of privilege, the life that should have been hers, risked everything to protect her. Despite being strangers, despite the years of separation, Kemi felt the same inexplicable bond that had drawn Amara to her. "Kemi, please," Amara whispered. "She's dangerous. Don't risk yourself for me." "You're my sister," Kemi said firmly, never taking her eyes off her mother. "I won't let anyone hurt you, not even her." Mrs. Okafor's face contorted with rage and desperation. "You stupid girl! Don't you understand? If she lives, if people discover the truth, you'll lose everything. The company, the houses, the money. It will all go to her." "I don't care about the money," Kemi shouted. "I care about having my sister back." Chief Okafor used the distraction to edge closer. "Grace, put the gun down. It's over. The truth is out." "No!" Mrs. Okafor's voice was becoming hysterical. "I worked too hard, sacrificed too much. I won't let this bastard child destroy my daughter's future." The words hit Amara like physical blows. Bastard child. After everything, Mrs. Okafor still refused to acknowledge her as Chief Okafor's legitimate daughter. But then, Kemi did something unexpected. She reached out and took Amara's hand, squeezing it tightly. "We're in this together," she whispered.
Whatever happens, we're sisters now." The simple gesture of acceptance, of love from the sister she'd never known she had, gave Amara strength she didn't know she possessed. "Mrs. Okafor," Amara said, her voice steady despite her terror, "you can kill me, but you can't kill the truth. DNA doesn't lie. Documents don't disappear. People will always wonder why the servant girl looked so much like your daughter. They'll wonder why you were so afraid of a simple maid that you murdered her," Chief Okafor added, still moving slowly closer. Mrs. Okafor looked around wildly, trapped and desperate. The gun shook in her hands. Then, from the doorway came an unexpected voice. "Madame, police are here." Mama Sewa stood in the entrance, her weathered face set with determination. Behind her were two uniformed officers. Mrs. Okafor spun toward them, and in that moment of distraction, Chief Okafor struck. He tackled his wife, sending the gun skittering across the marble floor. As the police restrained Mrs. Okafor, she screamed at Amara, "You've destroyed everything I built. I should have killed you as a baby." But Amara barely heard her. She was looking at her father, her real father, and the sister she'd found in the most unexpected way. After 17 years of alone, she finally had a family.
The police station was a chaotic blur of statements, evidence, and revelations. As Mrs. Okafor was led away in handcuffs, still screaming about her ruined plans, Amara sat beside Chief Okafor, struggling to process that this distinguished man was her father. Detective Adebayo, a sharp-eyed woman with graying hair, spread the evidence across the table. "We'll need DNA tests to confirm, but the documents and photographs are quite compelling. Mrs. Okafor has confessed to poisoning Falake Adiyami Okafor and arranging for the baby to disappear." "How did you know to bring the baby to the orphanage?" the detective asked Mrs. Okafor during questioning. "I had help," she said bitterly. "Dr. Bello, he delivered the baby. I paid him well to declare the child dead and make her disappear." Chief Okafor's hands clenched into fists. "Dr. Bello was our family doctor. I trusted him with my wife's life." "Where is this Dr. Bello now?" Detective Adebayo asked Mrs. Okafor. "Dead. Heart attack 3 years ago. Very convenient." Mrs. Okafor smiled coldly. But Amara remembered something. "Mama Sewa," she said suddenly. "She knew something was wrong. She kept warning me about shadows in the house." When they questioned the housekeeper, more truths emerged. Mama Sewa had worked for the family for over 20 years. She'd loved Falake like a daughter and had suspected Mrs. Okafor's role in her death. "I saw the madam giving medicine to Madam Falake. Special medicine that made her weaker, not stronger. But I was just a servant. Who would believe me? When the baby disappeared, I knew something terrible had happened. But Chief was so broken by grief, and the new madam was pregnant with Miss Kimmy. The house needed peace." "Why didn't you say anything when Amara arrived?" Chief Okafor asked. Mama Sewa's eyes filled with tears. "I hoped I was wrong, but the first time I saw her, I knew. She looked exactly like her mother at that age. And the way she moved, the way she smiled, it was like Madame Falake had come back to us." The DNA results came back within 48 hours, confirming what everyone already knew. Amara was indeed Chief Samuel Okafor's daughter and Kimmy's half-sister. But the reunion wasn't the fairy tale ending Amara had dreamed of in the orphanage. Chief Okafor, overwhelmed by guilt and grief, struggled to connect with the daughter he'd lost 17 years of believing her dead, had built walls that couldn't be torn down overnight. "I failed you," he said during one of their awkward meetings. "I failed your mother. I should have known, should have investigated." "You couldn't have known," Amara replied, although part of her wondered if he could have tried harder, searched longer. Kemi was the bridge between them. Despite losing her privileged position as the sole heiress, She embraced her newly discovered sister with genuine warmth. I always felt like something was missing, like I was living someone else's life. Now I know why. Aren't you angry? About the inheritance, the money? Kemi shook her head. Money doesn't buy you a family. I'd rather have a sister than $1 billion naira. But the house felt different now, haunted by Mrs. Okafor's crimes and the ghost of the mother Amara never really known. The hardest part was learning about Falake, piecing together memories from servants and friends who remembered her.
3 months after Mrs. Okafor's arrest, Amara stood in her mother's old bedroom, now hers by right of inheritance. Chief Okafor had preserved it exactly as it was, unable to face changing anything after her supposed death. "She would have loved you so much," he said, touching a photograph on the dresser. Fulake smiled from the frame, holding baby Amara, both wearing matching silver bracelets. "Tell me about her," Amara whispered. "She was light, pure joy. She loved helping people, always bringing orphans home for dinner, supporting widows in the community. She would have been so proud of the strong woman you've become." But their bonding was interrupted by Detective Adebayo's urgent call. "We have a problem. Mrs. Okafor's bail has been posted. She's been released pending trial." Amara's blood went cold. "Who posted bail?" "Her sister, Mrs. Kelenchi Nwangbo. Apparently she's quite wealthy and believes her sister is innocent." That evening, the house felt different, tense, watchful. Security was doubled, but Amara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her fears proved justified. The next morning, Mama Sewa was found unconscious in the kitchen, a threatening note pinned to her apron. "Send the bastard back where she belongs, or more people will suffer." At the hospital, as Mama Sewa recovered from the poisoning, the same slow-acting poison that had killed Folake, she grabbed Amara's hand. "She has help," Mama Sewa whispered. "Someone inside the house. Someone who's been reporting to her all along." "Who?" Chief Okafor demanded. "I don't know, but be careful. Trust no one." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She walked the halls of the mansion that should have been her childhood home, wondering if she'd ever be truly safe here. In the garden, she spotted a figure by the pool, someone texting rapidly on their phone. As she crept closer, her heart sank. It was Kemi. "Yes, she suspects nothing. The old woman is awake, but doesn't know who. Yes, I can do it tonight. Make it look like suicide." Amara backed away slowly, her heart breaking. Her sister, the one person she'd trusted completely, was working with Mrs. Okafor. But as she turned to flee, she bumped into a garden statue. The crash echoed through the night, and Kemi spun around. Their eyes met across the garden, and Amara saw something she didn't expect. Tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Why?" Amara's voice cracked. "I thought you loved me." "I do, but she has something that could destroy Daddy. Evidence of things he did when he was younger. If that information comes out, Daddy will go to prison for life." "But why hurt innocent people? Why hurt Mama Sewa?" "I don't know." She sobbed. "I'm trapped. If I don't help her, she destroys Daddy. If I do help her, I lose you." As the sisters stood in the garden, both crying, neither noticed the shadow watching from the terrace above. Chief Okafor had heard everything.
The confrontation came at dawn. Chief Okafor gathered his daughters in his study, the same room where Amara had discovered the truth about her identity. I know what Mrs. Okafor is holding over us, he said quietly. And I know about the choice she forced you to make, Kemi. Kemi couldn't meet his eyes. Daddy, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. Tell me about the evidence, Amara demanded. What did you do? Chief Okafor walked to his safe, withdrawing a thick folder. 20 years ago, I was desperate to build my business. I made deals with dangerous people, ignored safety regulations, cut corners. A factory collapsed. 12 workers died. The room went silent, except for the ticking of an antique clock. I covered it up, paid off investigators, buried the evidence. I've lived with the guilt every day since. Mrs. Okafor discovered the truth and has been using it to control me for years. That's why you married her, after Mother died. She knew I was vulnerable, grief-stricken. She positioned herself as the solution to all my problems, a wife who could give me respectability and keep my secrets. I thought I was protecting my business, my future. I didn't realize I was making a deal with the devil. Kemi looked up with tears in her eyes. What do we do now? Before Chief Okafor could answer, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting eerie shadows throughout the house. She's here, Amara whispered. They moved through the darkened mansion like hunters and prey, unsure who was which. In the main hallway, they found the security guards unconscious, their radios smashed. Mrs. Okafor's voice echoed through the house via the intercom system. Hello, family. Time for our final meeting. They found her in the living room where this all began, where Amara had first seen Kemi through the window. Mrs. Okafor sat calmly in an armchair, no longer the desperate woman with a gun. She looked composed, almost serene. I gave you a chance to handle this quietly. Send the girl away, maintain our family structure, but you chose her over me. She's my daughter, Chief Okafor said simply. And I'm your wife, Kemi's mother. I built this empire with you. You built it on lies and murder, as did you, Samuel. Which brings us to our final arrangement. She held up a tablet showing news footage, reporters gathering outside their gates, headlines about the factory collapse scandal breaking nationwide. The story goes live in 1 hour, unless you give me what I want. Which is? Full custody of Kemi, complete ownership of the business, and Amara's permanent disappearance. And if we refuse, then you go to prison, the business collapses, and both your daughters lose everything anyway. Chief Okafor looked at his daughters. One he'd raised, one he'd lost and found again. There's a third option. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Detective Adebayo? Yes, it's Chief Okafor. I'm ready to make a full confession about the factory incident. Yes, I know what it means. Mrs. Okafor's composure finally cracked. You fool! You'll destroy everything! Some things deserve to be destroyed. I should have faced this 20 years ago. I won't let my cowardice hurt my daughters anymore. As police sirens wailed in the distance, Mrs. Okafor made one last desperate move. She lunged for a letter opener on the table, but Amara was ready. The months of hard work as a servant had made her strong, quick. She caught Mrs. Okafor's wrist, and together, the sisters, united at last, restrained her.
1 year later, Amara stood before the newly established Folake Okafor Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping orphan children and supporting victims of domestic violence. The mansion had been sold, its proceeds funding the foundation's work. Chief Okafor was serving his sentence with dignity, finally free from decades of guilt and blackmail. His daughters visited him every week, their relationship healed by honesty and shared purpose. Mrs. Okafor had been convicted of murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy. She would spend the rest of her life in prison. Kemi had used her portion of the inheritance to open a shelter for abused women and children. I want to honor the life my sister should have had, she told reporters. As for Amara, she stood in the foundation's main office, wearing her mother's silver bracelet and a new piece of jewelry, a locket containing photos of both her parents. The girl who had been sold as a servant had become a successful advocate for the forgotten and abandoned. "Your mother would be so proud," Mama Sewa said, now recovered and working as the foundation's head administrator. Amara smiled, looking out at the children playing in the foundation's courtyard, children who, unlike her, would never have to wonder about their true identity or worth. She had found her family in the most unexpected way, lost it to truth and consequences, and discovered that the strongest bonds aren't always blood, they're the connections forged through choice, sacrifice, and love. The orphan girl who had been sold for labor had finally found her true value, not as a servant, but as a survivor, a sister, and a force for good in a world that had tried to erase her. Her story had begun with a transaction and a photograph, but it ended with transformation and hope. Proof that no secret, no matter how dark, can extinguish the light of truth forever.